Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Guilherme. I'm a postdoctoral fellow, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this collaboration between the TAIAO project and Scion, specifically the Forest Flows project. Serages is named on the presentation. He's back there. Can you raise your hand? So that's Serages. I was working with him for 2 years and I met him today. So that's very cool. I would like us to include, to add that there's been more people helping in this project. Justin, say hello. And also people from Scion, I think Russell and Ade at least. They are not here, but yeah, thank you for all your help in this project. And what's a brief contextualization? So planted forest is very important in New Zealand. It generates a lot of jobs, a lot of the GDP, and as a side effect or as the main effect, it also regulates the climate. And how do so this is very important, and then we need to monitor it. And how do we monitor? We have to build this huge infrastructure. This picture kind of shows it. So each small circle there shows one kind of domain of the sensors. So we could have dendrometers, which monitor the tree growth. We can have the water use being monitored along a lot of other sensors. And that creates a huge amount of data and also creates a huge infrastructure to maintain and collect and transmit and do everything with it. So this becomes very complex very fast. And for example, we can have more than 200 sensors per forest. And these sensors, they collect data every 5 minutes, and this just piles up and in stations, in servers. So you have the data provision, you have live databases, data fusion services. And the question is, why do we monitor so many things? Why do we go to this work, all this extent and all this work of going into the forest, installing the sensors? And basically, the goal for Forest Flows is to create this forest hydrology model. And with this forest hydrology model, it's possible to kind of anticipate and react to things like climate change, and also to monitor the quality of the water that's flowing downstream, and making sure that this plantation forest is not doing any harm to the environment. And how do we monitor? How do we keep everything this in a data mesh? So Albert already talked about it. Corey also mentioned very briefly. And in a data mesh, you have domains. So one example, and here your domain can be basically your activity. So we could have different domains for different sensors, and then you produce this data as a product, which is kind of digested data already aggregated with more meaning, with more value than the raw data. And you try to process it in an efficient and distributed way, so you don't get everything into the same place and creates a bottleneck. And going forward to the sensors, so what's a dendrometer sensor? Here, there's a picture. This is the dendrometer attached to the tree. This is kind of a diagram, and basically the main thing is this potentiometer, which measures how much the tree is pressuring this metal stick. And based on these readings, we can measure how much the tree is expanding and contracting. This is just a figure of the one arbitrary dendrometer from September to May. You can see it has this increasing trend, but there are some ups and downs. And this is the same dendrometer during a week. So you can see this is a very cyclic behavior given the night and day shift cycle. And also you can see, so that's okay. Sorry, this was supposed to be the first mount. It's these ones. These both charts are the same scale, and this is 1 day of the reading. So it starts during the early morning, still night. It's the smallest trunk size, and then it grows up during the day and starts shrinking again close to the evening. What's one issue besides the cyclical nature? This is the same dendrometer at different epochs, different months. And you can see there's different behaviors for one day. And depending on the season, depending on the climate, the weather, and everything else. So this makes the problem quite challenging of trying to kind of forecast this, because depending on the time of the year, it grows differently. That's a known fact, but yeah, I'm just showing you some images so you can understand it better. And then how do we forecast this? How do we create this hydrology model to understand how water is being used? The first step is trying to forecast what's happening in the future. And then we use some standard deep learning methods. For example, the LSTMs. So LSTMs are capable for sequence-to-sequence prediction problems. And then I'm not bold enough to pretend I can explain this better than Nick. But we also use transformers and ETS former, which is a specialization of the transformers architecture. And everything is like this very complex model that gets some data and tries to output the future. It's like a crystal ball without the witchcraft. So this is an example of one dendrometer sensor being forecasted. So for our training, we divide the whole forest in two parts. We use half of it to train, and then we test on each individual sensor. Yeah, the scale is not very good to see. And here is a zoomed in forecast. It's not as good as the flood prediction, as you can see. But yeah, there are some characteristics that make this prediction like this form. So what are the issues on this kind of preliminary result is that we are using a univariate time series. We only get the dendrometer reading and we try to forecast the dendrometer reading. It should be easy, but given the cycle nature and everything, it makes it challenging. And we are working to include more data, the other sensors, to include them into this forecast prediction. And that is our idea, is our hypothesis that's going to make the model more accurate. And then we also, okay, this is kind of a relatively too high, but we already take 450 seconds per epoch using just one type of data. So if we include more things, the processing time will get longer probably. And yeah, sometimes we need a very fast answer. So the second thing we tried in this use case was to check if we really need 5-minute frequency. So we do a temporal resolution study where instead of getting data every 5 minutes, we increase the interval between each reading. And these are the results we get. You can see that the error is quite similar in the 5-minute, 30-minute, and 3 hours. And okay, this is the mean overall tested sensors. And then you can see it reduces the training per epoch by a lot. And we can get a very similar, very competitive accuracy in these cases. So implications of having this 5-minute frequency is that someone has to keep the maintenance of these sensors and also the storage and processing cost, which can pile up, given that there's more than one forest and each forest would require a lot of computing power. Right now we are finishing a paper to submit to ecological informatics with these initial results of the use case. And what's the roadmap? So going forward, we want to increase the forecasting to a seasonal. So we want to forecast 3 months at a time. This allows an early adaptability to forecast environmental stress, so we can detect problems early and then we can correct them as fast as possible to avoid any damage, and also to include the complex edaphoclimatic data. And so that includes climate variables like temperature, precipitation, air pressure, and so on. And edaphic variables like soil water contact, texture, topography. So this model is going to become a lot more complex with a more access to these different types of data, and we hope that will aid us in allowing this long-term, real-time, data-driven decision-making, which means we can forecast things more precisely and we can adapt faster. And also, the main goal of the forest flows is to understand the water usage. And with all this data, then we can apply some explainable AI techniques. And then we can kind of get these explanations of what drives growth and research in the plantation forests. And then this is a video of it's a work in progress, but the platform, this is kind of the forecasting interface for the sensors. It's a very short, quick video. How can I play? Okay. So basically, it's just showing that there are different trained models, there are different temporal resolutions, and then you can select a sensor and forecast it. And then basically it reads from all this, the data mesh is storing all the models or all the sensor data. Yeah, this is not very good, very accurate, but it's kind of a simplified version of the model just to make it faster. And yeah, that's the very quick. But the idea is that you can select different models and you can select different sensors and measure how they are doing and see this real-time forecast. And there will be a training tab where you can select different models to train and different kind of parameters. And everything is going to be stored in the data mesh to allow this kind of online framework where you can keep things training and keep things forecasting at the same time. And that's it. Yeah. Thank you. And I think I left some time for questions or not, maybe not. Sorry.
Thank you, Guilherme. Such nice work. Yes, we have time for 2 questions. Please, have you got any question? Yes, please.
You partially answered my question. Wondering if you have some major climatic events that are labeled, and if you checked how the prediction in that case, because it feels like, let's say that some days the temperature drop 10 degrees out of nowhere, then it may have a big effect in the road. So I'm wondering if your model relevant to this or not.
Okay, so yeah, right now we don't have any kind of robustness for it because we only use the dendrometer data, so there's no context. But when we include the other variables, the other features, it should be more or less robust. But I'm not sure about extreme events because probably there's not going to be anything except for the floodings. And I'm not sure the floodings, yeah, maybe Serages know the places of the forest exactly, but I'm not sure the floods hit the forests themselves. Maybe just a bigger than average rainfall on some years, maybe that. Yeah.
Change for the nation based on this. I'm wondering, and I'm really curious about it. We can actually inverse this correlation and check if we see a difference in the growth, then it can help predict major events or something like this.
I'll see, yeah.
This would change for the actually, for example.
Yeah. That could be an interesting venue for research. I think now it's more the applicability of it, so it's just forecasting the seasonal things. But yeah, once that's done, then it opens the doors for, and that's very good. Thank you for your input.
Very good. Do we have, yep, please.
Okay, so yeah, for the science perspective, we are keeping the 5 minute. I'm not sure if it's temporal or it's spatial that you are talking, sorry. Okay, I see. Okay. Yeah, honestly, we are using data that Scion has available, and I know there's newer data for available for Scion, and they have some kind of correlation between the NIWA and Scion. There's a whole document on that. I'm not sure the scale right now because it's something that we're just starting doing. If 5 kilometers is fine, yeah, maybe that's a good starting point. Yeah, Serages?
Thank you. Thank you again